welcome everybody once again to another edition of the Daily Space Weather. I'm your host, smAsho, aka Dan. And we're looking at the LASCO C2 here of the coronal mass ejection that we were talking about yesterday. And we've got too many things to cover in one video today, so look for more content coming soon after this. If you notice that this video's been shortened, there's a reason. It's because more content. So anyway, that coronal mass ejection looks like it's largely gonna miss to the west, but there is a little bit of easterly component there as well. So we could see some strikes from that in the next day or two. And looking at the LASCO C3, we see a similar story. And by the way, we are streaming this live to Twitch. If you haven't subscribed over there, head to twitch.tv/smAsho and get the content. It turns out we weren't looking at anything. Okay, so here's the LASCO C2, folks. Just make sure there we go. So there's the LASCO C2, and you can see the coronal mass ejection we talked about yesterday is indeed largely headed off to the southwest, mainly the west. But there is a bit of a component that looks like it's Earth-facing there as well. It's not very significant. And here you can see that it's kind of coming out in sort of three directions here. It's sort of coming out southwest, northeast, and northwest. There are really like three components there. I'll draw it in with Epic Pen here. So some of the ejecta is headed this way, some is out here, and some is out here. So it's not what you'd call a proper halo coronal mass ejection, but it's interesting. Also, we've got a large earthquake striking Nevada, and so anyway, here's the view from Stereo A's Coronagraph. Let me shrink that down. Let me shrink that down a different way. There we go. So it's kind of a slow speed diffuse coronal mass ejection there. It sort of took its good old time. Some of it probably did splash back down onto the sun. And let's see if we can see what's going on with that. Now we see an active region rising also over here. And it's produced some X-ray flaring. Not quite high enough levels to be a B-class flare, but flaring nonetheless. Coronal holes in the Earth-facing zone. We've seen some magnetic connections, so lots of stuff to cover. This is a 48-hour image here in 193 angstroms. And we've made some custom helioviewer movies. First, let's look at the fields. Magnetic fields, that is. Not the baseball fields, because there's nobody in them. All right, here's 171 angstroms. See that active region rising. Not a lot of magnetic organization, but both of these areas here and here are both at pretty high latitudes, and I think all of our regular viewers would know what that means about solar cycles. For our irregular viewers, that means cycle 25 behavior is hugely outdoing cycle 24 behavior. So here's this active region rising, and we have it actually in two different wavelengths, 304 and 171 angstroms, to show you as many features as we possibly can in one section. And here's the view of the more active region in the north. It's the creme de la creme of today's solar activity. So that's the reason to really watch, folks. And again, we did see some X-ray flaring also. Not like a real X-ray flare, just a small one. So here in 94 angstroms, you'll see these bright spots. Now this looks similar to the X-ray imager, but it is not. This is actually iron, ultraviolet iron spectra. Anyway, there's a 48-hour view from the SDO. Let me just make sure that's refreshed. We have the latest image here. And we are streaming a little bit earlier than we normally do, folks. A little too much stuff going on. All right, so here's some more data for you. KP index is at 1. And check this out on spaceweather.com. We have this fantastic YouTube video from Stephen Hummel from University of Texas was the location, and you can see some sprites there. I don't know why the full screen button doesn't work. That's fun. Anyway, these interesting like waves, these green and red air glow bands rolling out. I don't know why the heck this thing doesn't. What is up with that? It thinks I'm in full screen. How do you like them apples? Anyway, it's on spaceweather.com. Some interesting sprites photographed. And the 10.7 centimeter radio flux back down to 68, or still at 68, I should say. Expect that to rise up soon in the next week. We'll see some increases, probably over 70 for that radio flux. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. There's where it'll be in a week. Just coming off of the new moon, I believe. Yep. We like to use theplanetstoday.com as it's a nice visual map of the solar system. Here's a sky map of what's above my head. It's 212. Do you know where your constellations are? If you've got a low horizon before the sun rises, you'll see Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and eventually the moon. And there's that little X-ray flare we were talking about. Almost a B class. It's like an A9 class flare. Proton flux is still flatlined, and we haven't seen any big hits by solar wind or anything like that. And here's a real-time solar wind. By the way, that earthquake occurred at 11:03, so right there is where that happened, following a bunch of shifts in the BTBZ. And I'm not going to get into the physics of that. That's for a cosmology segment. Current solar wind telemetry is as follows. BT is 3, BZ is -1. Not very exciting there. Phi angles at 114 degrees. Having spent quite a bit of time in magnetic connection zones over the past 24. There's the current 111 degrees there. Solar wind density coming off of its highs that we reported yesterday, around 30 protons per cubic centimeter. Now quite low, so expecting to see some electrons showing up one of these days. Solar wind density 2.19 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed 308 kilometers a second. That is background levels. We're going to talk cosmology real quick here, very briefly, about Fermi Bubbles. I don't know if you're familiar with Fermi Bubbles, but this is the Milky Way galaxy. And we see these X-ray and gamma ray emitting areas emanating from the location of Sagittarius A star's poloidal fields. Yes, I know, we've talked a lot about Z fields and poloidal fields and cosmic rays and so on the channel. Well, there's a reason for it. It's because it's kind of important as to the underlying cosmology. So there's an article on phys.org today about the common origin of Fermi bubbles. And basically somebody wrote some computer programs suggesting that, hey, they came out of the jets from Sagittarius A star. Well, who would have guessed? Some of us would have guessed. So anyway, read the article if you like. It's on phys.org's astronomy and space section. And the magnetosphere is about as weak as we've ever seen it on the channel. So the solar wind having suddenly dropped down at the same time as a coronal mass ejection headed this way, we could actually see a bit of a geomagnetic storm from it. So there's 4 hours of data on the density. You can see the density is very, very low there. Low density shown in white, high density shown in blue, mainly in the bow shock region. And here's the pressure. And we've seen it a little bit lower than this before, folks, but this is very, very low magnetohydrodynamic pressure. And you're talking about nanopascals for the units for this, if you're wondering. So we see a very diffuse and very low speed solar wind right now. And look for that to ramp up soon, because again, there's some activity rising right now in the east of the sun. So there's 4 hours of data. Here's the Geospace Magnetosphere Movie, the ground magnetic perturbation version of it, tuning in a little bit closer to home here, and not a lot of perturbations there over either of the North Poles, nor the South Pole. And we'll let that play through. And again, we're going to truncate today's video a little bit because we're not going to talk about covidiots, covidiacy, covidiotic maneuvers, or anything like that. That'll be for a different video because there's way too many things to do, including the BitChute special. So there you can see a little bit of magnetic perturbations kicking up at the end. GOES magnetometer here is looking a little smoother than it did the past couple of days. And let's see what's going on the Gong 2. There's the top view ecliptic plane field plot. And we have a pretty balanced sun right now, so one thing to note also is you can see you see a little bubble right there. You see that bubble? That is associated with that coronal mass ejection. So that's gonna go away in the next day. In fact, it's probably already gone away. Let's just make sure. Bring up the last image here. There's the last image. Anyway, the data is 1 hour and 37 minutes old. Line of sight field plot is uneventful. And we've got activity on both the high latitude north and the high latitude southeast portion of the sun. So no surprises there that we don't see a big tug on the B field, shown in blue. Electrons are at very low levels, so the Van Allen belts are super weak. There is some coronal ejecta on the way, not a whole lot. And here you can see very low electron flux levels. So we see very low proton flux, very low electron flux, a little bit of activity rising, but there's the total electron content forecast. And this is various layers of the atmosphere. We won't get into it today. Here's the GOES electron flux. And you can see that that is a little bit higher than it's been, slowly edging its way up as forecasted. Next, looking at the ionosphere. And the ionosphere is extremely anomalous right now. I'm just going to press reload here since we are streaming live. Make sure we have the most relevant data. Yeah, the ionosphere is awfully goofy looking. So while we are making the video a little bit early today, that is a fairly abnormal ionosphere, especially over places like the South Atlantic anomaly once again. If you're wondering where that is, it's about here. And I've got the wrong tool, folks. What is going on? That is too thin. Oh, there we go. That's the one. All right. Next, we'll look at, what are we looking at? Windy.com's pressure map. So, first of all, Katla volcano has begun erupting in southern Iceland. We'll talk briefly about it in a minute. First, we're going to show you the pressure cells. We're going to make that the GFS forecast instead of the European model. and then we'll advance that into tomorrow. Here's where we expect pressure zones to be via that GFS forecast. There's about midnight. And there's 12 noon. That's Eastern Daylight Time for where I am, and I'm on the same time as New York City, by the way, folks. And thanks to all of our new viewers, etc. Anyway, there's where pressure zones will be. And here's an image of the real-time solar wind. And we saw a bunch of shifts in the BTBZ here. And this is when the earthquake happened. The earthquake happened in Nevada at 11:03, and that was felt all over the place, including in Las Vegas. Expect to see lots of videos of things shaking. Here's the location of that. And it's out in the mountains near Hawthorne Army Depot. So a 6.5 magnitude quake and many, many aftershocks get reported today. Here's the past 24. And there's a quake in Washington State also. So we don't usually report on stuff like that, but a 3.0 magnitude. And let's just scroll up the list. Here's an extremely deep quake. And that one happened only 13 minutes before the large quake in Nevada. So we see it 5.3 at Fiji at 600 kilometers plus. And then only 13 minutes later, we see a 6.5 strike Nevada at a depth of 2.8 kilometers. So that is an interesting one indeed. Largest quake of the past couple of weeks, taking place in the U.S. So many aftershocks will show up at varying depths, it looks like. Although no deep quakes showing up in Nevada, all within 10 to 15 kilometers from the surface, it looks like. And we see a deep quake striking the Band-Aid Sea. It's a 4.8 magnitude at 321 kilometers. And here's a shallow Hawaiian quake. It's 2,400 meters above sea level, and that is Mauna Loa, nearly directly underneath one of the smaller calderas. So we try to report deep quakes and shallow quakes, as that's interesting to say the least. So lots of quakes coming off. Way too many to cover, in fact. And that's because this list is going to show all U.S. quakes. So we've got probably hundreds of quakes kicking off in the Nevada region. And let's actually zoom in on there to make a real mess of things. And there's that swarm. And we're basically inundated with quakes here, folks. We don't want to change the format because we scroll up the list. And we try not to take all day doing it, but this is a special case scenario here. And I don't like to mess with the filters on the USGS website because it's just a little bit user unfriendly. Here's a deep quake in Afghanistan. It's a 4.5 magnitude at 209 kilometers, coming in at 1800. And again, we don't want to extend this segment too long, folks. You're all capable of heading to USGS. It's all available at usgs.gov, earthquake.usgs.gov if you want to get fancy. Get fancy. Learn to play a DR-770. Another deep quake in Afghanistan. Holy cripes, that's a lot of quakes. Here's a deep quake at Vanuatu. That one nearly a 6 magnitude, a 5.9, and at a depth of 165 kilometers. So big time earthquake stuff kicking off at the same time the magnetosphere is shut down. The Van Allen belts are lacking electrons. And then we see a deep quake at Peru. That one coming in at 5:55 UT. Let's move on and talk about volcanoes. As we see an uptick here also. Various different volcanoes showing up on the list, and not the least of which is Katla, which is also known as the gateway to hell, by the way. And it's been producing some 20,000 foot ash plumes, but it's not on today's list yet. Abico is, though. Flight level 6,000 there. Mount Ibu back on the list there as it explodes. Flight level 6,000 there. Semeru explodes. Flight level 13,000 there. Sangay and Sawadkaya both also exploding. Don't fly your ultralight John Denver style aircraft or hang gliders over that. It could be a bad day. And we are completely skipping the Covidiocy for the day. We're going to say, hey, do you enjoy the original music? Well, if you head to soundclick.com/goldencatproductions, that's the record label. And there are 15 tracks over there. The one we use for the intro, by the way, is Unified Theory 3. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening to Molybdenum 99. And shout out to smAsho staff, as that track is now number 74 in the rock overall chart. So we've charted into the top 100. And it's currently there, folks. Jump on the bandwagon. Go listen to Molybdenum 99. And we've updated the smAsho forum. We're not going to talk about it in this video. By the way, we are on Locals. It's smashomash.locals.com. Dave Rubin's new site. And I wanted to show you some stuff on Instagram, so check this one out. It's some Grackles, one of my favorite birds. They weren't too happy to see me. But I got some good video of them, regardless. And we're going to recommend a channel, as I've become a huge ornithologist since about 6th grade, which coincidentally is the same time I started studying geology. I guess that would have been about 1986, 87, something like that. 86, I think. Anyway, we got some interesting videos yesterday of bees also. If you follow me on Instagram, you would already know this. Here's either a carpenter or a bumblebee. And he's playing hide and go seek with me. Also, we got some good flower picks. Here's a silver bell. There's a magnolia bud. There's an open magnolia flower. Some azaleas. And the ever-popular sun-like dandelion. And can anybody guess what that plant is? Leave a comment if you know what that last plant was. Also, we got a great cloud video yesterday. So there's your teaser. Check us out at instagram.com/smashomash. Lots of interactions going on over there. And yes, the common grackle. It's a good time. There's their range. And it's one of my favorite birds. It reminds me of an oily chicken. But super cool birds, the common grackle. And shout out to Leslie the Bird Nerd. So, great YouTube channel over there. Check that out, Leslie the Bird Nerd. Everything from hand-feeding blue jays and nuthatches to 5 reasons to like crows. I don't think she hand-feeds those. But check out her channel. It is fantastic. Here's a teaser from the latest video. A day in the life of a blue jay family. And we're getting advertisements, folks. Oh my goodness. Shut it down. As we broadcast from the Smash Bunker and wait for Leslie the Bird Nerd's ads to play so we can show you a snippet of her video. Anyway, great pastoral images. It's showing me a full minute ad, and we're just going to pass on the entire thing and say, go subscribe to Leslie the Bird Nerd. You'll learn stuff about birds you probably didn't know. We're trying to do some collabos with her. Perhaps making a video about mockingbirds or grackles or some birds that she doesn't have in. I believe she's in Minnesota. Global cooling. Here's an article on Zero Hedge. Now, let me just briefly, because this is by Paul Joseph Watson. I don't think he really pays attention to solar activity and the climate and things. Just briefly, let me state that solar activity lags the Earth's climate by about 3 years. And it all has to do with the latency of heat in the ocean. To sum it up, have you ever gone to the doctor and had the doctor take your temperature by having you blow into a breathalyzer? What's that? No, you haven't? Exactly, you haven't. And why is that? It's because of the latency of heat of water. Water retains heat. Rocks and the atmosphere do not retain heat the way water does. This is why water, one of the reasons why water is the primary greenhouse gas on the planet. And solar activity, you see, it takes a long time to heat up and cool down water. And this is part of the reason why the thermosphere index is an important factor. The current solar minimum is still not as deep as the previous solar minimum. So, but the point is, folks, you can expect it to continue to get colder for about 2 more years. So just let that sink in. And it all has to do with the surface of the Earth being covered with so much water. I'm not going to go any more in depth into it than that on the Daily Space Weather video, but perhaps check out this article as cold temperatures destroy entire civilizations and warm temperatures facilitate growth of mankind. So if you're worried about it getting warmer, a couple degrees warmer, a degree or 2 warmer, will do nothing besides make farming easier and more efficient. And it'll facilitate a larger population of humans on the planet. 1 degree or 2 degrees colder will kill billions of people. So let's get back to data that we look at every day. And we see some rotating systems here, both high pressure and low pressure variety at the jet stream. This is flight level 25,000 for you new viewers, by the way. Here's the Eastern World's jets. And they are all over the place. And there's going to be some funky weather in the Northern Hemisphere all the way around. So first let's look at some water vapor maps here. Here's Africa and Europe. Here's the Far East and Oceania. And I always scroll up to show you the date stamps so you know what you're looking at. Next we'll look at lightning maps. And we see heavy storms striking places like Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi. San Antonio, there's thunder rolling in. Dag. That is some serious thunder. And Corpus Christi, you are in the crosshairs. So severe thunderstorms there over a large portion, as well as a powerful low developing in the South Atlantic there, off the coast of Florida. We won't get too in depth into it. Here is the Doppler Radar map, and check out the size of those storms. That is going to produce things like high winds, damaging hail, possibly tornadoes, as cold air gets injected. When cold air meets hot, moist air, folks, it creates some Massive pressure gradients. And it looks like we're getting some severe storms here over Pennsylvania right now, too. Check it out. Long string of storms, about 2,000 miles long there, stretching all the way from Maine to the Texas-Mexico border. And here's what was going on a little earlier. We're gonna refresh this. You can see these waves caused by the pressure inversion that's happening here. This is the shortwave radar, the shortwave satellite rather. And this is how you're able to see things like water vapor at nighttime. So this will show you clouds when it's dark. And it's a pretty seriously violent system going on there. You've got two different systems, one on top of the other. And let's check out this string of clouds over South Carolina to Louisiana. This coherent 1,000-mile long cloud string. Anyway, no more sightseeing. Let's look at the water vapor map. And here's what was going on a little earlier over Texas. And you can see there's some dry air mixed in there that's causing additional compression. And let's update this to the most recent data here. And I'll leave the timestamps on there so everybody can see what we're looking at. Very, very powerful convergence zone there with massive pressure gradients. You've got this dry mass of air down here. And it's taken its good old time moving to the east. Let's show you the overall map. And we try not to do too much weather pornography on the daily space weather videos, but sometimes it's extra special. So hopefully everybody's doing okay in Texas. Please leave a comment if you're viewing from a mobile device because your power went out. By the way, thanks to our patrons, whether you're an assistant or an associate producer, we appreciate your continued support. The real source of funding for the channel is Patreon. We are also on Subscribestar. Subscribestar.com/smashomash. There's a different tier there, so go check that out. It's all different. We're also on PayPal, and etc. So visit the links below the video. Share on your social media. And thanks everybody on the Smash team. Whatever role your role might be, we appreciate your role a whole lot. Here's the intensitygram showing no sunspots. Next colorized magnetogram, there's the refresh. Couple little slight magnetic organization zones happening there, but nothing to really write home about. And let's look at anybody? Bueller, how about 131 angstroms? There's the current 48-hour video from the SDO. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Did you know I was not wearing pants for the whole video? Yeah, it's true. Anyway, thanks again, everybody. Look for more content coming soon, including probably at least 2 more videos today. One of them may be a BitChute exclusive, so you'll have to go find out by being on BitChute, bitchute.com/smashomash. Remember, stare at the sun, don't drink, and if you do, don't drive. Seriously, don't drive. And certainly don't ride a bike on the wrong side of the road wearing jeans while it's 80 degrees with a mask on your face, because you may convince me that I want to cut my wrists. Just kidding, folks, just kidding. Seriously, don't ride on the wrong side of the road with jeans and a mask, and just please don't. But in any case, welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, and since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back.